Good afternoon and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining today's earnings call of PT AKR Corporindo Tbk, jointly organized by Verdhana Indonesia and Nomura. And this afternoon, we are honored to have the management of AKR with us to share the company update. Before we begin, please note that this call is by invitation only and strictly closed for the media. If you're a member of the media, please disconnect right now. Kindly be reminded that your line will be on mute throughout this call. If you wish to raise a question during the Q&A session, you can either use the raise hand function or you can submit the question via chat or Q&A box. I must advise you that this call is being recorded today, July 27, 2023. So without further ado, I'm handing over to our moderator, JIIPE Aditan from Verdhana. JIIPE, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Stani. Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. Thank you for joining today's conference call. We are very honored to have the management of AKR with us today. So AKR with its superior logistics system across Indonesia in a very, very exciting business and the proxy of the downstreaming Indonesia, one of the Indonesia's biggest spotlight globally, right, is set to embark on, I think, what I call a sustainable growth journey over the next couple of years. So they have their core business, trading and distribution, and also the new growth drivers, very exciting industrial estate, JIIPE, and East Java, right, with the anchor tenant of Freeport, the biggest copper smelter globally. So would be interesting to see the company update for the 6 months and also outlook for the next couple of years. So I'm handing over to the AKR team to start the presentation, and then we can go to the Q&A session. AKR team, welcome, and the screen is yours. Thank you.
Yeah. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for attending our analyst meet discussion this afternoon, and thank you to JIIPE who arranged for this analyst meeting. So first of all, I'm pleased to see all of you today, and I'm pleased to announce that AKR first half 2023 performance has shows a consistent performance of our company, where our net profit grew by 8% year-on-year to Indonesian rupiah 1,031 billion. Our EBITDA increased 13% year-on-year, reaching Indonesian rupiah 1.64 trillion rupiah. And our gross profit growth of 12% year-on-year to Indonesia 1,810 billion rupiah. This strong performance is resulting in a very strong return on equity of 19%. And as you can see in the top right chart, the net profit of first half continued to grow in the past 5 years, driven by the improving trading and distribution performance, and also our land sales booking in the first half of 2023. Thus, I would like to summarize our first half performance in 2023 in the following point. The first, the trading and distribution business shows good performance, especially during the second quarter sales volume that is higher on quarterly basis as well on a yearly to yearly basis. This is despite the declining average selling price following the lower price of petroleum and the means of Platts Singapore. The profitability of our business-to-business petroleum segment can be maintained, while the retail sales of our BP AKR petrol station shows a significant improvement driven by the rollout of our new outlets as well as executed in a competitive pricing compared to other competitor in the other petrol station, while it's also offer a new customer experience. Furthermore, the chemical business segment is also experiencing a higher second quarter of 2023 sales volume on a yearly basis and also in a quarterly basis. This is mainly driven by the smelter segment. However, as we guided in the beginning of the year, the average selling price of chemical is softening as it reached a high base during the full year in 2022. For the industrial estate JIIPE, we have a positive development with the key investors, as well as we are still on track to reach our budget sales of the land. Furthermore, the copper smelter PT Freeport Indonesia shows a positive progress in which the development has reached 75% completion. We believe that this anchor tenant will attract more tenants, creating an ecosystem of copper, chemicals, battery, and EV industry. This will be the base of our recurring income from utility business in the industrial estate in the coming years. We also manage our working capital in a disciplined manner and maintaining a lean balance sheet to face the higher and uncertain interest rate environment. We are also improving our current ratio at 1.8 times in the second quarter 2023 from 1.4 times in the fourth quarter 2022. Our net gearing is currently at 0.01 times. At minus 0.01 times, indicating a net cash level. AKR is also committed to ESG improvement towards a sustainable future through executing our top priority strategies such as number 1, improving CO2 reporting, number 2, supply chain innovation and optimization, number 3, sustainable fuel offering, and number 4, championing the industry and developing a green industrial estate. This sustainable economic development will bring us to a next level of our development. Currently, AKR is rated as a medium risk by the Sustainalytics. I think with this, I will ask my colleague Suresh to explain more in detail. Yeah, Suresh, time is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Baryanto. In terms of the good performance and also a very strong balance sheet and also adequate cash flows, the board of AKR Corporindo has decided to reward our shareholders with an interim dividend payment of 50 rupiah per share, or a total amount of 986.9 billion rupiah will be distributed as interim dividend. We have also announced the schedule for payment of the interim dividend, with the recording date being August 7th, 2023. So this dividend will be paid to those shareholders on the recording who are appearing on the recording date and should be paid on the August 16th, 2023. For the next part of the presentation, I'll ask Yoga, our Head of Investor Relations, to take you through the segmental details of the performance for the 6 months 2023, following which I will come back to you and give you a more outlook of the performance in the second half of the year. Over to you, Yoga.
Thank you, Pak Suresh. Good to see you, everyone. My name is Ignatius Prayoga, Head of Investor Relations of AKR Corporindo. So allow me to present and explain the financial performance of AKR Corporindo of 6 months year 2023. The metrics of income statement indicate a good year-on-year performance growth in the first half 2023. The gross profit improved by 12%, indicating a business segment in AKR improved and delivered in first half 2023, mainly driven by the industrial estate business. The operating profit improved by 14% year-on-year, indicating efficiency in the operating expense and arriving at the net profit growth before tax and interest of 18%. After the impact from the non-controlling interest and net profit growth attributable to shareholders, reaching 8% year-on-year at 1.03 billion rupiah. If you are seeing the revenue breakdown, we can see the larger contribution from the industrial estate, from 1% in first half 2022, growing to 3% in the first half 2023. This became apparent in the gross profit level, where the gross profit of industrial estate reaching 18% of the total gross profit of the first half 2023, expanding from 9% in the gross profit of the first half 2022. The industrial estate itself grew almost 214% year-on-year, leading the gross profit to consolidated gross profit to 1.8 trillion rupiah, or growing by 12% year-on-year. The gross profit margins of the first half 2023 also improved from 7.3% to 9.1% this year. So if we see the trajectory of the historical first half each year, both gross profit and earnings shows consistent delivery across economic cycle, even when the pandemic and logistic and supply chain disruption happens in the year of 2020 to 2022. AKR delivers consistent growth in the past 5 years with a CAGR of 16.6% and 12% respectively for the gross profit and earnings. This reflecting how resilient the AKR business mix of AKR across the economic cycle. Both petroleum and chemicals volume in the second Q 2023 recorded high sales volume in the previous quarter and also second quarter last year, with achievement of 46% of full-year guidance for the petroleum and 50% of full-year guidance for the chemicals. As we guided in the beginning of the year, the ASP of both products and petroleum and chemicals are softening, which explains the decline in the revenue. However, to remind you, the petroleum business is using the pass-through mechanism, which allows us to maintain trading and distribution performance within the guided margins. For the chemicals, the ASP during 6 months 2023 is lower than 2022 due to normalizing, because in 2022 it's a high base for chemical ASP, but the level is still above the pre-COVID level. Furthermore, for JIIPE, it shows significant improvement in interest and number of inquiries after obtaining operational special economic zone, which enables the potential tenants to get fiscal and non-fiscal benefit. In the first half 2023, JIIPE obtained a land sales of 19.6 hectares from PT Nova Haliang Indonesia, a copper foil and tube manufacturer, and also signing agreements with the KMS regarding the various industrial utilities by the end of March 2023. Furthermore, President Jokowi made his 4th visit to JIIPE for groundbreaking inauguration of PT Haliang, which shows a high expectation and support from the Indonesia government. JIIPE also secured another marketing sales and high-profile interest from overseas and domestic companies, of which we believe will make their purchase in the second half of 2023. So for the overall operating expense, we always maintain a strict control over expense, where we maintain between 2 to 4% of the revenues. In 6 months, we maintain our OPEX at the level of 2.3%, which is still within the acceptable range. For the balance sheet, we deploy linear balance sheet strategy, as mentioned by Pak Har previously, to face higher interest rate environment this year. Thus, with the current ratio of AKR improving significantly from 1.4% in the 4Q 2022 to 1.8 times in second Q 2023. Furthermore, our working capital of first Q is more ample due to stringent working capital. Thus, we end up with a cash position of 4.6 trillion with negative net gearing ratio, indicating the net cash position of AKR. The profitability margins are improving, leading to a stable ROA and ROE at the level of 8% and 19% respectively. Furthermore, we have lower receivable and inventory days period, indicating earlier payment from the customers and delivery to the customers, which we also reduce the payable period to avoid larger interest rate in the LC. With this, current ratio of the company improved by 1.8 times in the June 2023 compared to first 1.4 times in 4Q 2022, and we still maintain a net cash position in the first half 2023. Now for the business prospect and ESG initiative, I'll hand over to Mr. Suresh Vembu, our Director and Corporate Secretary.
Thank you, Pak Yoga, for the discussion on the segments during the 6 months, which shows a very strong performance overall in the trading distribution segment, both in the volumes for petroleum and also volume for the chemical business. We've been able to sustain our margins. So I'd like to give you a bit of an explanation regarding the outlook for these businesses going forward in the second half of this year. In terms of petroleum business, historically, we have noticed that the volumes generally pick up in the second half of the year with more activity in the mining sector, plantations and other sectors. Also driven by the weather conditions, we normally find that the second half is more drier. So the activity really picks up in the second half of the year. So we expect in the second half of 2023, and also with the current predictions of El Nino, the volumes of petroleum products is likely to be higher. Anyway, we have already reached 46% of our full year target for the volumes on petroleum. So we are quite confident of achieving at a volume of about 2.9 to 3 million kiloliters in the year 2023, as we had guided in the beginning of the year. Similarly, in the case of chemicals, the volumes of chemical, which has already reached 50% of our full year target, is on track, and we are also expecting a higher volume growth in the second half of the year. Like was explained, the ASP or the selling prices of chemicals have corrected, but still higher than historical levels. So as we are a commission-based chemical distributor with more than 80 to 85% of our revenue coming from commission-based chemicals. So this could be the factor which could also impact it. But overall, we expect that the volume for basic chemicals will improve further, with the demand from rayon, smelters and other segments being quite strong. As far as the industrial estate segment is concerned, we have booked 19.6 hectares of land out of the 70 to 75 hectares of land sales for this full year. We expect to complete negotiations and also hand over big chunks of land to domestic and foreign investors. During the second half of the year, we already have a marketing sale to a customer, which we have now in the process of finalizing all the documentations and handover. So with the demand for the land and also with the significant interest from investors and also the ecosystem coming up in place in JIIPE, we expect that the land sales will pick up and also be higher than what we are predicting for this year. Overall, in the long term, we see that the demand for both petroleum and chemical will be driven not only by the downstreaming of minerals, but also a higher economic activity in Indonesia. Our retail business also, as Haryanto mentioned, is now improving further in terms of volume and also in terms of delivery of the expansion of network. We expect that the land sales and also the utilities and recurring income will increase further coming from the year 2024, when many of these big plants are coming up in JIIPE, including the largest copper smelter being built by Freeport, Shini Glass, Hailiang, and other customers who are all now in the construction phase and expected to complete their activity by 2024, driving the demand for electricity, power, gas, and others. Next slide. So I think in terms of the segment outlook, like I mentioned, the second half of the year, we see that the projected demand for energy fuel will continue to rise. As far as the retail outlets of BP AKR, we've already rolled out and operating right now 41 retail outlets. And by end of the year, we will have 50 outlets running. Currently, the retail portion of the business already accounts for more than 9% of our total petroleum revenue. But with our target to open more petrol stations, we expect this segment also to contribute to the overall petroleum growth. Our ultimate aim is to reach 350 outlets by 2030. Next slide. So if you see the BP AKR petrol station, if you see the graph on the right-hand top corner, the volume of retail has gone up significantly in the last 6-7 months, as Indonesian government has also now restricted the subsidy to only the targeted segments. And gasoline such as RON 92, 95 is now no longer subsidized. And also the price differential between AKR, BP AKR, along with the other competitors in the marketplace has narrowed down, resulting in more volumes in our petrol stations. Every month we have seen volume growth in the range of 5 to 10%, and we expect the volumes for the retail to continue to grow in the near future. In this sense, we see that the BP AKR petrol stations are now more widespread across Java, in Greater Jakarta, and also in Surabaya area. And the brand is also now becoming more familiar. Our unique offering of fuel and non-fuel offering is also being appreciated, and we see not only the number of customers pumping in fuel in our station, but we also see more dealers now attracted towards joining hands with us to expand the network. We also have introduced the swap batteries in our retail outlets, and in the future, when the EV population increases, we also have an opportunity to bring in EV charging into our petrol stations. So overall, you can see AKR not only growing in the B2B, but also the B2C section, and also the EV will be a major growth area going forward. Next slide. In terms of the JIIPE land sales and also the prospects, as we have outlined here, the pipeline of land inquiries is very healthy. We see that the industries that are looking at investing in JIIPE or manufacturing plants in JIIPE are primarily large industrial companies such as the petrochemicals, steel, base refineries, and also the ecosystem around copper. So we see a lot of demand for industrial land, and we are in constant discussion with many of the targeted companies. The pipeline, I notice, is more than 600 hectares. And potential for this year also, we have got very strong inquiries. That's why I think this very interesting times for JIIPE, especially with land of more than 600 hectares ready to sell. We are also now in the process of acquiring the balanced land so that we can also have more than 1,000 hectares of land to be sold to the big companies. So as we already explained in our earlier presentations, our business model revolves around selling the land to those industrial companies which require utilities like power, water, electricity, gas, and also port operations, which will give us potential to increase our recurring income going forward. We are also happy to inform that we have got also new facilities signed with Bank BNI. A 2.5 trillion rupiah credit facility was signed by BKMS, the industrial estate company, for financing industrial estate activities, including land, utilities, and also meeting its financial obligations. Overall, we see with this sort of ongoing discussions, the proportion of JIIPE to the contribution to the overall AKR profitability will also continuously increase. Next slide. You can see by 2024, with all these big plants coming up, the projection for power, water, and gas requirement is slated to go up significantly. We also have good support from PLN to support the major companies which are now setting up shop in JIIPE. So we already have a contract with PLN. BKMS gets high tension power from PLN, and then we distribute in the industrial estate to all our tenants. So we also have potential to generate income. And you will see that the utilities income will continue to rise from 2024. Already in 23, you see the utilities income have started going up. So we project that the land sales and utility income is now in solid grounds, and we see the potential for the contribution from this is now much more certain and also very bright. Next slide. I would like to briefly highlight to you the commitment Haryanto in his initial opening remarks mentioned about our commitment to further drive the ESG initiatives in our company. Next slide. Under the leadership of Haryanto and also our independent commissioner, we have last year set up a roadmap for progressing towards the ESG objectives of the company. A sustainability house has already been put together in terms of an umbrella for various sustainability related commitments. We have defined our purpose. We want to make AKR a company which not only delivers sustainable growth and returns to our stakeholders, but also touches the lives of millions of people by providing efficient logistics and supply chain. We also are providing a lot of benefits to the economy by championing the manufacturing activities, while being very conscious about the environment, contribution to people and our society. Next slide. So we are very happy to report to you that AKR has been working towards this. During the first 6 months of this year, AKR also has been recognized for its effort to have detailed CO2 reporting, both in terms of data collection, analysis, and also the accuracy of the report. The efforts have been rewarded by being classified under the platinum category by one of the leading houses here, which also look at the data collection and analysis and accuracy. Also, over the past 2 years, we've also invested in terms of various innovative IT platforms to optimize our supply chain. And this has enabled us to not only bring efficiencies in our supply chain, but also reduce carbon footprints, and also we're working on that angle. Our sustainable offerings, both in terms of blending biofuels and also improving the gasoline efforts, is also one of our strategies towards reducing our carbon footprint. Like was explained by Parianto, we are striving towards making JIIPE a green industrial estate and also bringing a lot of economic benefits to the country, both in terms of attracting FDI, but also providing a base for clean and also renewable energy in this state. Our overall effort is to continue the sustainable economic development by providing not only employment opportunities, but also facilitating trade and commerce in Indonesia. Next slide. So I think our efforts, if you see here in terms of our reporting in our sustainability report, our emission intensity is reduced. We have optimized our truck fleets, which have resulted in significant reduction in emissions. Like was mentioned initially, the Sustainalytics have also rated the company at a medium risk at 26.8 in terms of the risk, and we are classified in the medium risk. Kehati Foundation, one of the ESG foundations in Indonesia, has evaluated AKR, and also we maintain our position in the indices, including ESG Quality 45 Index and also the ESG IDX Kehati Index. And we continue to work towards various investments, which will also enable us to provide cleaner and also reduce our carbon footprint overall. Next slide. Before I close, I also would like to inform you that AKR has been included in the IDX 30 index. We are already in the LQ 45. Effective from 1st of August, AKR is also included among the IDX 30, one of the indices which tracks the most liquid companies and also very prospective companies overall. So I think these are some of the key takeaways from our presentation before we open our Q&A session. Overall, the performance in the first half of the year is on track. While we have not had any booking of land sales in the second quarter, we already have some marketing sales and also a good prospect in the second half of the year, which will also increase the contribution of JIIPE overall to the profitability of the company. So we continue to maintain our guidance for the full year, where we are guided that AKR will report at least 15 to 16% growth in net profit. We continue to keep this guidance and have not changed that particular guidance for the time being. So over to you, Pak Jupri, for opening up the Q&A sessions.
Thank you, Pak Har, Pak Suresh, and Pak Yoga for the very comprehensive presentation as always. Once again, congrats for the result, Pak. Mind you that I noticed that the result at the 8% growth, this is on top of close to double growth, Pak, last year. So I think it shows, yeah, like Yoga mentioned just now, the continuous results, right, from the company. So with that, I think it's very great. Okay, so we open up the Q&A session right now. Just a reminder for participants, if you wish to raise a question, you can use the raise hand function on your Zoom page, or you can submit your question in the Q&A chat box, or you can send it directly to me. So I already have a few questions, Pak, actually sent directly to me from the investors before the session has begun, actually. So the appetite is quite big. So maybe I'll start with the first two questions. So first question is, could Pak Har share his petroleum business review and preview for second Q23 result and also going to second half and the next year? So that's the first question. Second question would be on the volume growth. I think he's talking about the nickel conference that Verdhana did yesterday, Pak. I think Senior Minister Luhut and the various stakeholders mentioned, Pak, during our previous session yesterday. I think Pak Suresh and Pak Naresh were there. That there will be more smelters coming to Indonesia, Pak, and possibly not just the upstream, but middle stream and downstreaming as well. So how would the theme of downstreaming plays a role in the volume growth for AKRA over the next couple of years? Maybe those two questions, Pak. So review and outlook for the petroleum business. Thank you.
Okay. So I think for the petroleum business, for this year, we are still on track to achieve maybe about 2.9 to 3 million kiloliter. The reason being that, as you know, that the more smelter coming into Indonesia, the downstreaming, the more production of these minerals will be. And so this is something that will drive the demand growth for the petroleum. And then number two, also always between May to November is a dry season in Indonesia, which means that more and more people will ramp up the production of the minerals, including the coal and so on, which means that again the demand of the petroleum will go up, and that's the reason why it's always that the second half the volume is always higher than the first half, because the first half normally have many rain, which hinders the production of the coal and the minerals mining company. Yeah, so that is for this year. For next year, I believe that the demand will continue to grow, because we believe that the demand of coal, even though people in Europe is becoming to stabilize the energy demand and the price, but we believe also countries like India, like China will continue to grow, even though slower, but they're still growing 4 to 5%, and India may be around 7 to 8%, which means that the demand of minerals and coal will continue to grow. Plus, we believe that our growth of our retail petroleum business will continue to grow. As we expand, I think by the end of the year, we are confident to have at least 50 outlets operational. And by the end of next year, our target is to have at least 100 petroleum station outlet in operational. So this will continue to grow the demand and the sales volume of our petroleum. So this is, we still believe that in the next few years, our growth not only the B2B, but also the B2C. And then for the second question, I think the volume of the downstreaming will continue to grow. The reason because like what Pak Luhut say, for example, like nickel matte. Now government wants, instead of exporting nickel matte, why not we process downstreaming, from nickel matte to HPAL or to many other downstreaming to like a precursor of a battery and so on. So we believe that this downstreaming will continue, not only new smelter, but also the downstreaming of the smelter. The downstreaming of the smelter into maybe like electric battery and so on. And then from the semi-processed material like nickel matte, will go down to maybe HPAL or, going to nickel sulfate, which is the raw material of petroleum, EV battery. So we believe that this downstreaming will continue to grow to drive the growth of the mineral production from the mining side, and also the chemicals needed for this downstreaming, because from nickel matte, they don't use much chemical, but nickel matte to HPAL or to nickel sulfate, they use a lot of chemicals, whether it's caustic soda, whether it's a sulfuric acid. So this will continue to grow the demand, which is our main product. So that's why we believe that the next few years, we still see the growth of our petroleum demand, maybe a single digit, but for the chemical, maybe can be double digit in the next few years.
I see. So thank you, Pak Har. I think that that's very clear and very insightful. And I think this relates to another question that an investor is sent out to me. I think this is asking about your chemical business, Pak. So you mentioned just now about the downstreaming. So it impacts more on your chemical business, albeit, to some extent, it also benefits the petroleum business, right? So it's a double whammy impact. But is there any update from Freeport's sulfuric acid, Pak? Whether there are some portion of it that could be AKRAs to be traded?
Yes, we have already discussed with them, and we cannot reveal yet because it's still confidential. But we hope that we can also participate in distributing their products.
So, I think I heard that they will produce about 1.7, 1.8 million liter of sulfuric acid, yeah, which some of those, I think somewhere about 600,000 is already with the local partners, right? I think it's a petrochemical and petrochemical company in Gresik. So could you maybe share a rough estimate, Pak, where we could see the trajectory of AKR chemical business from this
Yeah.
report,
I
Pak?
think it's still confidential. We cannot reveal first. I think until we sign on the dotted line, we cannot make announcement. Yeah.
That's awesome. From the tone, I see a positive tone, Pak. So I'm looking forward to hear the news. Thank you, Pak Har.
Thank you.
Okay, so just a reminder for participants: if you have questions, you can send your question in the chat box, or you can use your raise hand function to ask your questions directly. So we have two questions from the floor, Pak. It's from Faras. So first one is regarding your guidance. Initially, the company guided for a 14 to 16% EPS growth in 2023. Is this target still achievable? And if so, what are the factors that can influence the growth in second half other than the potentially high petroleum sales volume? So that's the first question. Second question would be, with regards to the fuel stations, can you disclose how much does it contribute to your gross profit, and what is your projection of gross profit contribution for the next 3 to 5 years? Those two, Pak. Thank you.
Okay, so maybe the first one I will answer. The second one, Suresh will answer regarding the BPAKR station. Yeah. So the first question regarding the guidance, yes, we are still confident because number one, not only the continued improvement on the petroleum and the chemical performance, but the second half also we believe we will book much bigger number of land sales in JIIPE compared to the first half. So, for example, in second quarter, we have already made pre-sales, which because we are waiting for the buyer to get the approval from the BKPM, we cannot hand over the land yet. So, hopefully in this third quarter, we will be able to hand over the land. Plus, there are still 2 or 3 customers, big customers that are in the pipeline that we hope will be able to book in the second half of 23, which will meet our target of 75 to 80 hectare of land sales this year. So this will also contribute to the achievement of our target of 14 to 16% profit growth. Yeah, so maybe Suresh.
Yeah. Regarding the question on contribution of the retail towards the overall gross profit of the company, this year, the retail operations of AKR, both from BP AKR and also from our AKR petrol stations, which we have got 130 of them operating, plus another 50 of BP AKR by the end of the year, or a total of 180 outlets supplying gasoline and also subsidized diesel. In my estimate, will contribute close to 9 to 10% of the AKR petroleum volumes. So if we are talking about 2.9 to 3 million kiloliters, the total volume which will be from the retail will close to about 9 to 10% of the total volumes of petroleum sold by AKR. As far as the gross profit of the BP AKR petrol stations, they are similar or even better than the B2B volumes, B2B margins. But in the case of retail, the most important factor which determines the profitability is not only the gross profit, but also the costs and also the network volumes. So I think this year, we expect that the BP AKR petrol stations will be breaking even at the EBITDA level. But once we have a larger network next year, like Harindra mentioned, about 80 to 100 outlets, and also with the sales increasing month on month and year on year basis, we see that the contribution of BP AKR will also be further improved in the coming year. As far as the AKR retail outlets which sell subsidized petroleum products, these are also selling products which are based on economic price of the products, and we're also getting the subsidies from the government. So overall, I think the retail portion of the business, which is contributing about, in my opinion, about 6 to 8% of the petroleum gross profit, in the coming years will increase further to about 15 to 18% of our gross profit by the year 2027, when in our network of BP AKR petrol station would be easily about 250 outlets plus. So this is becoming a significant part of our growth strategy on the petroleum business. And we also see that the potential of the retail in Indonesia, especially with the government now encouraging more usage of RON 90 and above fuels and reducing the lower octane fuels, is also driving more customers to the retail portion of business. So I think it's a very potential business, and we're also working hard in terms of in growing this network across Indonesia, supported by AKR Logistics. Thank you.
Oh, that's very comprehensive, Pak Har, Pak Suresh. Thank you very much. I believe, I think there's a slide that Indonesia is still underpumped. I like that sentence. And for sure, it's definitely a growth driver for AKR as well. So we have one question from the participants. Raise hand. Douglas, please go ahead.
Yeah, hi guys. Thanks very much for the time and the good results. I have two questions. First of all is about operating expenses. And perhaps you could remind us, because although we saw a small growth year over year versus the first half of last year, the second half had much higher operating expenses than the first half. So I was just wondering if you could refresh us on the reason why operating expenses accelerated a lot in the second half of last year, and whether there is some seasonality in that we could expect to repeat.
Yeah, I'll take this question. If you see on slide number 13 of the presentation, yes, the operating expenses in the first 6 months is 452 billion compared to 416 billion in the year 2022. Your question is on last year when the operating expenses were higher in the second half. The main increase in operating expense second half was primarily due to the salaries and employee benefits. As you know, last year our profits doubled. So the board of directors also increased the variable pay and also the bonuses to our employees for their very good performance. That's why last year the salary and employee benefits increased in the second half. After we saw the good performance in the 6 months, we had a couple of variable payments that we made to our employees and also increased the portion of the bonus last year. So that was one of the main reasons why the operating expenses in the second half of the year went up. So this year, if you see, the salary and the employee benefits are similar to last year. We do not see any major increase in the other expenses, but in the case of selling and other expenses, traveling and other costs have gone up post-COVID with more travel expenses and also administration expenses going up. But still, we feel that these operating expenses are very much under control. If the performance of the company is good, who knows, the board may decide to compensate our good performing employees in a much higher fashion. That is the only reason why the operating expenses went up last year. Maybe Parianto, is there anything?
Yeah, I think again the second half is because of the salary benefit that we allocate for more bonus and the variable pay. And the second also, I think it's the higher volume, which means that we also have higher expenses in our operation branches. So I think that's the reason why it increased. But in terms of the fixed costs or the more less variable costs, we always very strongly control them, and that's the reason why we can always maintain a control increase as compared to our profit.
Okay, understood. So in terms of the second half expectation for the salary and employee benefits, we should, presuming we produce another good year, we should expect to see some of that seasonality essentially repeat, albeit the scale of increase we saw last year based on the scale of business improvement may not repeat. Is that a fair expectation?
Yes. Yes. So the second half this year may not have as much increase in the variable benefit as well as the bonus as second half last year. Because last year our profit increased by 100%, more than 100%. This year our profit increased 14 to 16%, which means definitely the increase will be much less compared to last year.
That's terrific. Thank you. Second question is just on the margins in the petroleum distribution business. As you said, volumes grew, I think you said 5% quarter on quarter. And so it would appear that the gross profit per litre is continuing in that downward trend from the high of the fourth quarter. I'm guessing it's somewhere just over 750 per litre now. Where do we find a floor in that? Because I know we've talked in the past about how we've made a lot of structural improvements in that business, and so it should be structurally more profitable than it was historically when it was at the sort of 500 to 600 level. But as I say, that trend has gone 1200, 850, 750. Where do we find a floor in that, and what causes that?
I think in business we cannot say any floor, but but of course we believe that our margin will be sustainable at this level because we believe that now with the more efficiency, more volume of our business, our cost per unit will go down because economies of scale. And then number two, also, as I mentioned, that because of the COVID time, customer knows that the value of AKR and they need AKR, as one of their supplier because of our strong end-to-end supply chains capability. So I believe that our margin is sustainable and maybe in the future may improve slightly compared to the today's level. But for the chemical, as you know that about 70%, 75% of our chemicals are based on commission. And because of that, there is a lower rupiah commission per unit because the price of chemical has come down from the peak of 2022. But in terms of volume, we believe that, in the growing volume, this over time will be compensated in the sense that, coming the second half and next year, the profitability in rupiah term from the chemical should improve.
Understood. And seeing as you mentioned that, should we still expect the chemicals margin to be flattish at about 7%?
Yes. And luckily currently we believe that the current price of chemical have reached more or less the bottom. And that should be able to stabilize at least until the end of this year. So that will help us also.
Great. Thank you very much, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Douglas. Pahar, I have two questions now lined up for you. So first question would be, so regarding your operating cash flow in first half 23, it's less than that of first half 22. Is this because just of the recording? If it's because of recording, is that would it make sense to assume that second half 23 operating cash flow would be higher than second half 2022? So that's the first question on the operating cash flow. Second question would be, could you share the business arrangement with BP? And do you have a roadmap for EV charger? And what level of EV intensity for AKRA to start the journey in the EV charging? Those two, thank you.
Okay, I'll take the question on the cash flows. Yes, see, AKR's operating cash flow is also dependent upon when we are settling our letter of credits, also in terms of our receivables and collections. But in the month of June, as you know, Pak Jupri, the Indonesian government all of a sudden declared a very long holiday at the end of June.
Some say it's too long, Pak Suresh. Some say
it's too long. It's too long. Suddenly on the June 15th or something, they declared that there will be a 6-day holiday for everybody to go and have a good time. But it impacted business in the sense that many of the banks were closed, the cash flows, receivables, collections, which were slated for that particular week, were postponed to the first week of July. So I think if you look at the collections, cash received from our customers, that would have gone up higher. So some of that got postponed to the first week of July. So that's why you see that the cash in the operating activity was slightly lower than that. But what you should be measuring is the EBITDA. If I look at the EBITDA of AKR overall, it's gone up by more than 14%. Cash flow generated by the company increased to nearly 1.8 trillion rupiah during the first 6 months, or increased by more than 14% compared to last year. And we also maintain a very strict control in terms of our working capital management, both in terms of the receivable days and also the payable days. So one of the strategies that we use currently is to reduce the payable days, so that not only we have to pay lesser interest to the banks, but also make every serious effort to collect the receivables on time. So maybe this was a freak phenomena which happened because of the long holiday which was announced by the government at the end of June. But we have collected all that money in the first week of July. So that will reflect in the third quarter results. So there is no deterioration in terms of cash flow. And you can also see that in terms of our investments and capex during the first 6 months of nearly about 147 billion rupiah of the acquisition of industrial land and payments, and also in terms of capex, all of them are very much under control. So I think we are maintaining a very good balance sheet ratios, including improvement in current ratio, and also the debt overall debt equity ratio is also at a very low level. And our net gearing, like was mentioned by Arianto, is at cash positive level at this time. So there are no concerns on cash flow. We are maintaining a very good control on our working capital and also the cash generation. Regarding the relationship with BP, maybe Arianto would like to give his view about our relationship on the long-term basis.
Yeah. I think our relations with BP is very good. I mean, we started with the petrol station, and then we move into the aviation fuel, and then we also handle their lubricant Castrol for the marine and also industry. And now the next one, we hope in August, maybe by end of August or early September, we would be able to sign a joint development agreement for LNG terminal. So I think it shows that our relationship with BP is going from strength to strength. And regarding the EV charger, I think BP have installed now how many stations?
12 stations.
About 12 stations already. He installed the EV charger, and so when the volume or the number of EV cars more and more, it would be very easy to add more EV chargers in the petrol station. And not only for cars, BP also now already for the battery swapping for the motorcycle, the EV motorcycle. So it shows that in fact we are very much prepared when the time comes from the switching from the ICE car into the EV car or EV motorcycles.
Yeah. Just to add that basically these charges, these 12 outlets of BP currently are working with a local partner to swap batteries, especially for those electric scooters and motorcycles. Those 12 outlets now offer these swap batteries wherein they can charge their batteries for the electric scooters. Regarding the charging for high-speed charging for the cars and also the electric vehicles, BP and AKR are looking towards installing these charging stations over the next couple of years when we see the volumes of and the demand for fast charging is going to increase. So if you see, all the petrol stations of BP AKR are laid out keeping this in mind. We have very well laid out petrol stations which also offer non-fuel. While you're charging your car, you also go and have a coffee, buy some essential goods and have a good time. So that is why the BP AKR petrol stations are already designed in such a way that we can incorporate these fast chargings in the coming years. And BP has the technology and has done this successfully in Europe, US, and also in China. So we are well placed towards introducing EV charging as and when the time is right. But we have made a start towards the scooters, motorcycles and scooters for the swapping of batteries.
Oh, that's very interesting. That you mentioned, Pak Suresh, BP already installed 12 EV charging stations in Indonesia.
Oh, no, not yet for the cars, Paya. It's mostly for the scooters and motorcycles.
Okay.
But as far as the electric vehicle charging, they already have done that in India. So we're just waiting for the opportune time when the amount of EV cars goes up that we can bring this to Indonesia and put that together. It should not be a very long process. Yeah. We should be able to get that done. And like I said, in all the most important for EV charging is to provide enough space like parking where the cars can be parked for the EV charging. So all these petrol stations of BP AKR have the facility for parking of these vehicles in the petrol stations in front of the non-fuel also. So this has already been incorporated. And we have got a very innovative thing that we have done first time in Indonesia is to provide all these petrol stations, especially for the fuel, in containers. These are modular petrol stations. So in the future, when we have to move some of these to accommodate the EV, we already have started thinking about that and implemented modular petrol stations. If you can see that in Jakarta and also in East Java. So we're already thinking ahead in terms of how to design our petrol stations to bring this EV charging in the future. And BB is also committed to serving this market.
Okay, thank you. Since we're nearing the end of time, Pak, I think we still have 2 questions. I don't know if you have time for those 2, Pak.
No problem. Please go ahead.
Okay. Okay. So I think first question is regarding the mandatory export repatriation in Indonesia, Pak. So as you know, a couple of weeks back, government published this news about the exporter for commodities and the downstreaming items to repatriate 30% of their export to Indonesia for at least three months, right? So the client is wondering whether there is any risks, I would say maybe upside risks for AKR on the receivable days, and whether those money that they repatriate in Indonesia could be used to pay you faster than previously or maybe slower, but So that's the first question on the mandatory export repatriation, Pak. Second question regarding the fuel margin, Pak. You mentioned that the guidance is fuel margin at close to 800 rupiah per liter. Would it be wise for us to maintain it in the second half 23 outlook, or it can be changed to higher or lower? Those 2 questions. Thank you.
I think for the mandatory 30% has to be put in Indonesia. We don't know yet what would be the impact on our receivable. So I think we just have to wait and see because it will start in the 1st of August. Yeah.
Yes,
so
should be 1st in August.
But in our opinion, it should not impact our receivable. But we don't know yet whether it will be even better or not. Because by bringing the money in Indonesia, theoretically they have more cash in Indonesia to pay their payables. Yeah. So let's see how it turns out. Yeah. So we have no comment yet at this moment because we are still wait and see. And the second, for the margin, I think we can maintain the same margin until the end of the year.
Same margin. Okay, that's awesome. Perfect. I think that wraps our session for today. Pak Har, Pak Suresh, and Pak Yoga, thank you very much. Congratulations for the result once again. Looking forward what will you bring to the table in the second half. Definitely gonna be very, very exciting. Looking at the Pak Har's faces, you know that it's gonna be very, very fun in the second half, right? So congratulations once again, Pak Har, and looking forward to seeing you all again. And for the participants, thank you very much for joining. I hope this brings value to all of you. Thank you and take care, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you, Jupri. Thank you, everyone. Yeah.
Pak Har, Pak Suresh, Pak Yoga, terima kasih.
Jupri, only for the benefit of the thing, we have shared the presentation to you.
Yeah.
If you can forward it to the participants in case they would like to have a copy of it.
I will do so. Thank you. Thank you, Pak Suresh.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good day.
Have a good day.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. This is end of our session. You may now disconnect. Thank you and have a nice day.